Hello, good day. I am coming to you today to do a devotion of sorts, but somebody sent me a message asking a few questions, and so I thought that I would go ahead and answer them live so that way you would have a good understanding of what I meant by a post that I either posted myself individually, but by the wording, it's probably one that I was forwarding on that I agreed with what it was saying. So here's what the questions were, and then I will give you guys my responses towards them. So this is what was sent to me. I'm curious. I'm not wanting to argue. I am also a fellow believer. I have been reading your comments about faith and healing. In one of your posts, you stated Jesus did not come to show you how to suffer with a good attitude. Jesus came so you would not have to suffer. Everything he did was done for you so you would not have to earn anything. It is all by grace through faith. If you believe you must go through trials to grow in faith or earn anything at all, you are ruining your life with your own stupidity. But it doesn't have to be that way. And then that's the quote. Now, reading that, I know that that's not the way I write or talk. So it was me sharing somebody else's post that I agreed with whatever they were trying to convey. So his then comments are, with temptation, I agree with you, but with the testing of our faith and growing into maturity through trials, what about Job? What about Paul, who was told no to one of his prayers, but rather God's grace was sufficient? What about the fact we age, and with that these bodies wear out? Surely that is not because of our lack of faith or stupidity on our part. Do not get me wrong. I would value your prayers in faith. It would seem you have more faith than I for physical healing, and perhaps that is your gift. I do believe with God all things are possible, but I also know sometimes my faith must be weak, and I do ask God to help me with that, and to know when to pray or how to pray for those going through physical struggles, because sometimes it does appear God says no, and not now, as that did happen in his word as well. Okay, so he's brought forth several questions. So I'm going to try to answer those. And one book that I have recommended multiple times, and feel free to contact me to get one, is a book by Ted Rouse, which is called Why Suffering Cannot Be the Will of God. The title is not great because a lot of people think that means that I'm saying that they won't go through trials or tribulations, or that that's what he's saying, but that's not what the book is about. Because we all know that Jesus himself said that we would be persecuted for followers of him. So that's not what I'm talking about. And that's exactly how I started this off. I saying, let's start off by responding that suffering I was speaking of was anything outside of persecution, because we are followers of Jesus Christ, and so we will experience religious persecution. Now, moving on, what about Job? Faith grows by test/trial is what the comment was, and they brought up Job. So Job's fear opened the door to the devil and his power, for he said, "For the thing which I greatly feared is come upon me, and the which I was afraid of is come upon me. I was not in safety, neither had I rest, neither was I quiet, yet trouble came." Job 3:25-26. He was not operating in great faith, but in great fear. Fear and faith are direct opposites. Fear is of Satan's kingdom, while faith is of God's kingdom. 2 Timothy 1:7 tells us, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." So if God didn't give us fear, who does the fear come from? And if you just said Satan, you're right. That's where it came from. Hebrews 11:6 tells us that, "But without faith it is impossible to please him." And we're talking about God. "For he that cometh to God must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him." So how do we please God? We have faith. Faith is simply believing what God said is true. People a lot of times get confused believing that there is a God with believing God in what he said as being the same thing, but they're really not. They're completely two different things. You can believe that I am a human, that my name is Pamela, or that I'm speaking, but you may not believe what I tell you. So there's a big difference, okay? John, my computer just went running amok and jumping too far ahead. 1 John 4:18 says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. Okay, what is perfect love? If you've heard some of my teachings, you know what I'm getting ready to say. God is love. Jesus Christ was the expressed image of God. We are to grow up into the fullness of Christ. If we live and move and have our being in him, we are love. 2 Timothy 1:7 makes sure we understand that fear is from Satan. So if fear is from Satan and it brings torment, then who is the one that's trying to torment you? Satan. Once we understand God's love for us, we won't fear that maybe God will one day take all the blessings away, as Job did. Jeremiah 29:11 says, for I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. So he wants good for you. Understanding the character of God is very important. God always wants the best for us, for you, for me. Job wasn't listening to God, but to Satan when he got into great fear. For God says, but whoso hearkeneth unto me shall dwell safely, and shall be quiet from fear of evil. Proverbs 1:33. This is the direct opposite of Job's statement, stating he was not safe or quiet, but feared evil. Faith opens the door for God to work. Fear opens the door for the devil to work. Fear and faith are contrary one to another. Hebrews 11:6 and Matthew 8:26 tell us this stuff, and I'm not going to go into reading because I have lots more scriptures to read. So faith cooperates with God, and fear cooperates with the devil. Fear is faith in the negative. Fear is believing something bad is going to happen, and it believes it and speaks it even before it is seen. Now, remember, God's word tells us that life and death are in the power of the tongue. And those who love it will eat the fruit thereof. So we speak these evil things into existence by what we believe in the abundance of our heart, because our mouth speaks it. So don't make negative confessions over yourself. Okay? Let me continue on. So faith cooperates with God, and fear cooperates with the devil. Fear is faith in the negative. Fear is believing something bad is going to happen, and it believes it and speaks it even before it sees it. This then is negative faith. It wasn't until Adam acted on the words of the devil that he too experienced fear. And you can read that in Genesis 3:4-10. Before this, he only knew faith. Mark 4:40 tells us, and he, meaning Jesus, said unto them, why are you so fearful? How is it that you have no faith? Luke 8:50 tells us, fear not, believe only, and he shall be made whole. Have faith in God. Mark 11:22. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believeth. So here we are, a little bit different between believing that God exists and believing what he said. Okay? Above all, take the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. Ephesians 6:16. Be sober, vigilant, because your adversary the devil, as a roaring lion, walketh about seeking whom he may devour. Who resists steadfast in faith. 1 Peter 5:8-9. Lastly, God did not give Satan permission to afflict Job. He reminded him that Job was already in his hand. But what he did do was make Satan know that he would not allow Satan to kill Job. He commanded that you cannot kill him. But he was already in his hand. When Lucifer was cast out of heaven with a third of the angels, where was he sent to? He was sent to earth. 2 Corinthians 4:4 tells us, in whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine upon them. Ephesians 2:2 also tells us, where in time past you walked according to the course of the world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience. This is talking about the devil, the adversary. So who is the prince of the air? The devil. Who is the god of this world? The devil. Adam was given authority over this world, and he gave his authority over to Satan instead of commanding him to go. Adam and Eve were put here to subdue and take dominion over every living thing. God gave Adam control of this world for a specific period of time, which at the end of this time period, he, meaning God, will return and set up his earthly kingdom. Adam gave that control to Satan, and now God works in this world through those who diligently seek him. Job, like many who suffer today, wasn't an evil person as we view evil today. But he was destroyed by the lack of knowledge. He was destroyed for the lack of knowledge. He didn't understand about Satan and his evil cohorts and how they use fear and hopelessness to gain access to people's lives, just as much as the church still doesn't understand these things today. I'm not talking about the church at all the church, but a good bit of the church has fallen down this lie trap, and it's just so sad. We are not to okay, let me see. And like Job, much of the Christian world continues to blame God for what the devil is doing, instead of realizing who is really at fault and what the character of each person is. Do a study of the character of God, because Jesus is the expressed image of God. And what was his character? Did he come here? Was he zapping people with illness or sickness? No, he came here to heal. If Job would have known John 10:10, the thief cometh not but to steal, to kill, and to destroy, and I come that they might have life, and that they might have it more abundantly, he would have had a better understanding of God. And then you have the next question about tests and trials. Well, James 1, and it speaks that you will go through diverse temptations, and these temptations, when you go through them, actually create in you fruit. Satan is testing you to see if your salvation is real or if it's words only. He also wants to try you, meaning Satan, wants to try you over and over again to see if he can take you to hell with him and destroy you, because you are made in the image of God. It also tells you that if you don't understand, ask, and God will give you wisdom. Wisdom is knowledge applied, so he is going to give you both. But he doesn't want you double-minded, but believing. Because if you are double-minded, it makes you unstable in all your ways, in everything that you do, in the way that you process and think, because you're using, in this case, man's way of thinking, which is stinking thinking. It's not the mind of Christ. That's why the mind must be renewed. And to the depth that you are renewed to be the image of Christ is at the point of what you have renewed your mind to. God charged us to renew our minds. That's not an automatic thing at salvation. You are saved and will go to heaven, but he charges us to renew our mind so that way we can have the mind of Christ, so we can grow up into the fullness of Christ. If you succumb to Satan's temptations, it will bring forth sin, and in the end, the result is death. This is what the first James 1 is telling us when it comes to trials and tests. So a lot of people think that they're coming from the Lord, but they don't really read that with the right perspective. They read it with the perspective of viewing God as Zeus. waiting for you to mess up so he can zap you with a lightning bolt. But really, he's for you, and he's cheerleading and championing you on. It's Satan who's trying to get you to screw up because he wants to ruin anything that's made in the image of God. Now, on to Paul's thorn. Paul's thorn in the flesh was not disease, as some ignorantly say, and it was not sent by God, but was, just as Paul said in Scripture, a messenger, an angel of Satan sent to stir up trouble wherever he went and to stop him from preaching the gospel. 2 Corinthians 12, 8 through 10 says, "For this thing I besought the Lord thrice," 3 times, "that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproach, in necessities, in persecution, in distresses, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then am I strong." Sometimes people say they have weak faith, but what they are saying is that they have unbelief. So going on to the next thing about, that your faith may be weak. In Mark 9:23 through 24, it tells us, Jesus said unto him, "If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believe." And straightway the father of the child cried and said with tears, "Lord, I believe, help thou my unbelief." This is an oxymoron. Okay? Keep in mind that this is a man speaking and not Jesus. He didn't want to believe that he believed. He didn't want to believe that he didn't believe, but he admits that he doesn't believe. Believing Jesus is God is not the same as believing what he said. James 2:19 tells us, "Thou believest there is one God. Thou dost well. The devils also believe and tremble." That doesn't mean that they're followers of God. You can't believe you can believe there is a God, but do you believe what God said? There's a difference. When praying, there's a difference between praying in confidence because you know what Jesus said is true, and pleading, begging, and earnestly hoping. Okay, that's not the same. Things to remember, God can't say no to promises he already said yes to. And if we simply use his name and believe without wavering and not being double-minded, then it will happen. We have to just have confidence in what we know to be true. And if we don't know the truth and our mind isn't renewed, it makes it really hard to stand firm on those things. Remember, you are God's son or God's child, man's servant, and the devil's master. Okay? It's not about